Everybody, welcome to my channel, Be Free Now with Maria. Today I want to talk about healthy versus unhealthy communication. Communication is something that's hard for most of us, and the reason for it is because we get triggered when people say things that we don't like, or we feel threatened by something that's happening, and our emotions get stirred up, and once we get triggered, right, and we start then using words that may be perceived or actually could be judgmental, although we may not intend to be judgmental towards somebody else. So, for example, somebody saying something that you don't like or isn't responding in the way that you're comfortable with, you may say, I don't like the way you're talking to me. I find you to be very aggressive, and so forth. And it may sound like clear, honest communication, but when we say, I find you to be aggressive, the other person can easily feel attacked, especially if their intention is not to be aggressive, or even if they are angry, but they feel like they're standing in their truth and really aren't doing anything wrong, or at least not from their perception, right? Those words could be triggering for somebody. And like I said, right, we can say, well, I was just speaking my truth. Yes, but even when we're speaking our truth, it can lead to making somebody feel defensive, and not that we're making them feel that way, but that it opens up that energetic exchange, because they're going to feel judged, right? And so instead of saying, your style of communication is very aggressive, we can say, I'm uncomfortable with the way this conversation is going or how I'm feeling right now. So I don't want to have this conversation right now. I'm going to pull back and we can talk about this later or something else, right? But the point is that we're not necessarily making a direct statement about how we're perceiving the other person's words, but rather stating what works for us and what doesn't. And that's the difference, right? Because again, even if the other person is being aggressive and we are speaking the truth, as it could be observed, it can still lead to an escalation in a negative direction, because whenever we express how we are seeing someone and it's not in a positive light, the other person is bound to get defensive. And then things are going to snowball from there. So shifting from you are speaking to me in an aggressive way and I'm not comfortable with that, we can switch that to, I'm uncomfortable with the way I'm feeling right now in this conversation and I don't want to, have this conversation at this moment. Has nothing to do with them, but rather how you're feeling. And that's important, right? Be clear on how you're feeling, what works for you and what you want. And if something doesn't feel good, pull back. Be clear on that. And focusing on how you're feeling gives you back the power to say, no, thank you, right? I'm not going to stand here and I'm not going to have this conversation because I'm not comfortable. And whether it's because they're being negative, accusatory, aggressive, judgmental, whatever it is, it's neither here nor there. It's really more about how you're feeling and what you want for yourself. If you want to feel good and that conversation doesn't feel good to you, all the rest is going to open up the door in a different direction that you may not want to go into, and meaning the possibility of an argument may escalate or things can get even more tense, because when you say to somebody, even if you are perceiving it correctly that they're being aggressive, they may feel the need to have to defend themselves. Like, what do you mean I'm being aggressive? I'm not being aggressive, you're being aggressive. And there you go, back and forth, right? Now you have to say something, they have to say something, and it just continues growing from there. And it can easily be shifted by a statement like, I'm not comfortable with the way I'm feeling right now, or I'd rather talk about this later, I'm not in good space now, or any other words. But really, it has to come from how you're feeling and what you're not comfortable with or you don't want in that particular moment in time for yourself in terms of a feeling. And shifting from giving them the truth, because not everybody wants to hear the truth, or at least how you're perceiving them in that particular moment, especially if it's not a compliment, right? If you give somebody a compliment, they're feeling great. If you give somebody your honest opinion about their expression towards you in that particular moment, they're not going to feel comfortable. Now, that's not to say, by the way, in certain relationships, obviously, right, if it's, a romantic relationship, that's not to say that later on you can't come back and have a conversation with that person about how you were feeling. Not so much about their intentions and how they were coming across, but just how you were feeling with the words that were being used. Obviously, if it's somebody who you're just running across and you don't know, but you just had an interaction with, in a local store or something, I mean, that's different, right? You just let it be right there in that moment in time, and you just keep it moving. But regrouping is important. In other words, we don't necessarily have to stay and have a communication that is going to make us feel worse or could lead to a bigger argument. We don't have to do that. We have the ability to just feel that we're uncomfortable and then say, I'm not comfortable. And so this is where paying attention to our feelings is important, because it's giving us information that we can use to redirect ourselves. In other words, to shift. We don't need to stay in that space, and we don't have to have a conversation that we're not comfortable with. We can shift from it. And we want to do that with as much compassion for ourselves as for anybody else. In other words, we want to have the compassion for ourselves to honor that we're feeling uncomfortable and that we need time to process our feelings, not their actions. Our feelings is what we really want to process. And the reason for it is because their actions is something that we want to explore, but more as a secondary thing, not so much as the primary thing. The primary thing is always how we're feeling, and it really is about us, because like I've said in the past, right, what other people do is about them, and how we feel is about us. So that's the part that we primarily want to address, and then we can address everything else from there. But again, be mindful, right, that in whichever words you choose to use, that you're focusing on how you're feeling and what works for you and what doesn't, not so much who they are, and how they come off, and how it turns you off, or how much you don't like it, and so forth, because that will lead to them feeling defensive, feeling judged. Whether it's true or not, they will feel judged, and that will then lead to some form of an escalation. Now, it doesn't have to be the worst level of escalation, but it will be some sense of more tension in that communication. So the healthier approach is to focus on your feelings and to go from there. All right, so before I end, I do want to pick a word from my bag of words and see what else I'm inspired to share in relation to healthy and unhealthy communication. Oh, doubt. Ooh, I like doubt. Okay, so not that I like to have doubt, but when in doubt, do nothing. It's almost like if we're not really sure about something, don't do anything. Wait, process it, sit with it, and then do something. We don't necessarily have to deal with something in that particular moment just because it was given to us in that particular moment. There are some things that, yes, require immediate action, but most things don't, especially if someone is having a communication with you, is speaking to you in a way that feels uncomfortable to you, right? We don't necessarily have to go there. And whenever we are in doubt about what we should say or what's the best way to address something, sit with it, right? Think about the words and, how they're making you feel. And and also think about, right, how would you feel if somebody said these words to you? Because that also gives us insight, right? If I'm comfortable, would I be comfortable with somebody saying, Maria, you're speaking to me in a way that feels aggressive? No, I may feel attacked. So right there, I know that, okay, that's maybe not the best choice of words, because I would feel attacked if somebody said to me I was speaking to them in that way. It doesn't matter if I am or not. It doesn't matter. I would feel attacked, even if I know they're telling the truth. You know what they say, right? The truth hurts. That's right. It does. And that's why it can lead to other stuff, right? Because whether we're doing it or not, it's not really the issue, is when we feel judged and we feel attacked. So whenever in doubt, pause, think about it, process it, and see how you would feel if someone were using those words with you. All right. I hope that helps. Bye for now. Have a beautiful day.